All right, today we're talking about the privacy risks of AI that you should be aware of for you and for your clients. My guest today is Jodi Daniels. She is an expert in privacy, especially online, and I'll tell you more about her in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of the show, and you know, if you've listened before, which hopefully you have, that every week we have smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of different companies. We've had Netflix and Grubhub and Redfin and Gusto Kinko's. Go check out the archives. Lots of great episodes for you to check out. And this episode, of course, brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We're the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. In fact, we invented what some called the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. So to learn more about that, you can go to our website, rise25.com, or email our team at support@rise25.com. All right, my guest here today is Jodi Daniels. She is the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors. It is a leading data privacy consultancy, and she's got an MBA from Emory and over 25 years of experience in marketing, strategy, finance, and of course, privacy. And she has helped everything from startups to Fortune 500 companies to build privacy programs. And today, in the age of AI, it's more relevant than ever how you can protect your privacy for yourself and your clients. So we're going to be talking about that here today. And Jodi, excited to have you here today. And I always love to get to know what people are like as a kid first. And so you said that you did a bit of babysitting here or there. But what interested me is that your father was an entrepreneur, had some kind of amorphous business. We're not quite sure exactly what he did, something involving office work. And you're not quite sure if he paid you either. So apparently it was some kind of indentured servitude that you had from your father, making you work in this office job in the corporate world. So tell me a little bit about what that experience was like.
Well, didn't totally make me. And he had a variety of different businesses that I was aware of, but sort of less relevant because he was always doing a variety of things. My mom also had a real estate business. And I spent a lot of time in the office, and I would file. I also thought using a computer, which they had back then, was really cool, and a typewriter. And I loved pressing all of the keys. And therefore, I found ways to actually do that. We had, if anyone ever remembers, actual manila folders, and then you had these little labels that you could type on a typewriter and feed it through. So I did a lot of filing, a lot of organizing. I thought answering the phone was also really fun and cool, and as well as using a calculator, which I guess was maybe early on because I ended up as an accountant in the beginning of my career. I must have just really liked playing with all the keys on the keyboard.
And did this kind of preview an interest in privacy? Do you think that this led to some kind of interest, or
absolutely not?
Absolutely not. Okay,
not even close. No, the privacy story is more. One of my roles was building a targeted advertising network for autotrader.com. So I basically stalked you for cars before Facebook did. Nowadays, people are used to going online. They're looking for their shirt or their blender and their pillows, and it follows you around the internet. Well, I did that for cars quite a while ago.
This is like 20 years ago. This is like late 2000s that you're doing this?
It is late 2000s, that's right.
Yeah, so
yeah,
very early days. Okay.
And I had many other companies vying for our automotive data because we were the leader in that space. And I told them all, no, it's our data. So fast forward, the online advertising industry basically banded together in self-regulation. They could kind of see what was potentially coming with actual regulation. They said, no, we're going to police ourselves. So long story short, I was responsible for what this online advertising industry required of the different participants. That's how I got into privacy. I then could see how it was evolving, more data, more targeting. The regulation was starting to come to fruition. And nowadays we actually have a number of different laws globally really focused on it. But that's how I got into privacy, as I stalked you for cars. So you're welcome, everyone.
I'm wondering, like in those early days, it sounds like you could see that there regulation was going to come at some point. What was the conversation like with you talking to other executives and saying, look, one day this data, this information is going to be really important or paid attention to? Are people going to care about it? And, if we're not careful about it, then regulation is going to really restrict what we can do with it. What was it like when did you feel like you were, making a loud noise about it and people weren't listening to you? What were those conversations like?
I do feel that a lot of the time. Some people would listen, some people got it and understood that, and it didn't really matter which part of the business I was in or just in general. People understood if I have data and I give it to a company, that they don't know all the nuance, but they kind of expect the company is going to use the data just for me and give me whatever it is that exchange incorporated. So if data was going to be used in a way that might have surprised an individual, that's where people would run into challenges. And companies did that. You could go in the news and see company A collected this kind of data, but then they also collected more. For example, there was an app, it was a flashlight app. That was a really popular example. Well, it's a flashlight. So why would it need your contact information? That was an app that collected contact information. People downloaded it because they wanted a flashlight, right? There's where there's a massive disconnect. And there were oodles of stories just like it. And at the time, people didn't really get privacy. They kind of thought, well, when I have to deal with it, I'll deal with it. But until then, I'm just going to keep amassing all the data because I can. And trying to get people to think individual first, not company first, is tricky and challenging, especially here in the United States, where we're a very capitalistic society and companies many of them are for profit. That makes sense. What is in the best interest of the company? It's taken a lot of mishaps, B corporations, social responsibility, a variety of other things, not even just in the privacy space, for companies to start flipping that model. And then globally, where they're required to flip that model. So the privacy laws, for example, in the EU are essentially, short version, individual first, company second.
So I want to ask about, flash forward 20 years, there have been so many of these large data breaches that have happened. Looking back now, do you think that companies underinvested in privacy programs and didn't put enough resources into protecting private information?
Well, first, I'm going to separate privacy and security. They are intertwined. They're two sides of a coin, pick whichever analogy you want, but they are actually really different. Security is going to be about protecting the information, and those are cybersecurity programs. Then you're going to have privacy, which is I have all this information and maybe I've protected it well. Can I use it? Should I use it? Did I tell you what I'm doing with it? Did I give you choices? Privacy is about the collection, use, sharing, and basically choices of the data. And it involves an element of protection. Cybersecurity is one of those that for a long time has been underinvested in a number of companies, but not all companies. Many companies really do take security very seriously. And it's also one of those areas where the bad actors are often a step ahead and just continue to find all different ways to be able to exploit whichever new technology and hole that they can possibly find. It's very challenging for any organization to be 100% protected. It's just one of those, you have to continuously invest and train in people. And as the tech evolves and new ways of using data and sharing data, companies have to keep moving with it. So some companies are moving with it. Some companies are still underinvested, and just think, especially small companies. If any of you listening are a small business, I highly encourage you to make sure you have your cybersecurity practices in a good place, because bad actors love small companies. Why? Because they know that they don't likely have what is needed in place to protect them. So they're happy to go and exploit. They have nothing else to do. It makes them happy.
And you mentioned regulation in Europe. I know California is another one that had an early privacy law. Can you give us, I'm sure this could be an hour-long presentation on this topic, but what has been the evolution of a regulation after, you got involved 20 years ago and kind of saw it start to evolve?
Yeah. So the short version is there's a privacy law in Europe and the UK called the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and it was effective in 2018. That date's pretty important because that's kind of the date for modern privacy laws. It's a
and
really
you started your company in 2017, so like right before that. Yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
And it's a really strict law. It requires companies to really think first, can they use this data? Significant disclosures. It's kind of the reason we have cookie banners all over the place. Whether you should or shouldn't have them, that's a whole different conversation. But it was this pivotal moment in time for modern privacy. Other countries around the world copied it, some word for word, some tweaked different parts of it. It's considered the gold standard right now of privacy laws. If we move forward to the United States, you mentioned the California law. The first comprehensive state privacy law is the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, and it became effective in 2020. It is not the same as the European privacy law. It's really different. Both of them have some pieces that are similar, but they're really different. If you comply with one, you are not 100% in compliance with the other. The California law started the evolution here in the United States. And today we have 19 state comprehensive privacy laws. Then we have some additional state privacy laws in certain sectors. Like if you're listening and you're in the health or health adjacent space, you have to worry about a law in Washington state that is just focused on health. And health could be a yoga studio, could be supplements, could be a fitness app. It's a very broad law. We have some other laws that focus on children, some on social media, and then we still have some of our federal laws. If anyone here has ever tried to unsubscribe from an email or a text message or a auto dialer, those are all national privacy laws. When you go to the doctor's office, you get your HIPAA privacy notice for those of you here in the United States. If you have a bank account or a credit card statement, you have a certain privacy notice that I'm sure everyone here has read. They've never tossed it out or hit delete, but that comes from a financial privacy law. So we have a really patchwork approach here in the United States. And depending on the size of your company and the kind of data you process, you have to pay attention to all of those different laws.
Okay, so it all sounds really overwhelming. How do you keep track of it all? And then also, if I'm a business owner listening to this, how do I keep track of it all and keep in mind whether it's going to affect me or not?
It's kind of following for many people the same in HR and tax. It kind of depends on where you are and where your business is. And it's one of those, you have to know enough to have the right people to pay attention. So for us, this is our job. It is our job to pay attention to these different privacy laws. And our mission is all about simplifying privacy. That's what we're here to do. And just like I find HR and compliance overwhelming, I have to go and find the right HR and compliance advisors or tax advisors and rely on their expertise to be able to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So for us, we're paying attention to all of these. We have our methods of managing that and simplifying it. It's why we put out a significant amount of content to try and simplify that information. And anytime we're talking to a company, our very first questions are trying to determine which laws even affect them, because they don't affect everybody. And then in terms of a business, what they should be doing, my very first suggestion is going to be understanding who you are, who your customers are. Are you a B2B business or a B2C business? What type of data, meaning are you an e-commerce site? Are you in the health related space, the financial space, the children's space? Are you a technology company? Because all of that determines which laws might affect you. And either find an advisor who can help you with that, or there's so much information online. With a little bit of a quick search, you might be able to help easily sort out, I need to worry about this law or that law. Then you can decide, do you do a DIY approach or find an advisor to help you?
Okay. And you mentioned cookie banners. It seems like in the last 2 years or so, every website you go to now has got some version of an opt-in of some sort or a cookie banner. So you mentioned that a lot of people do that wrong. So talk a little bit about how companies should be tackling cookie banners and whether they need one or not.
Yes, it's very interesting. So I'll use myself as an example. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I have no privacy law here in the state of Georgia that protects me. All I have is some national laws. And I get cookie banners all day long. And I actually don't need a single cookie banner. There's no law here that says I have to opt in to have cookies. Why do we get them all? It kind of started with GDPR, which is an opt-in. So the very short version, if you are actively targeting and trying to get people, a lot of countries globally, but let's just use the EU and the UK, it needs to be opt-in, which means banner, I accept, then you get to fire the cookie. Well, many
And the
people just
cookie
apply
is
that
just for
globally.
the noobs out there, for the people who are not super tech savvy. So this cookie is the piece of software on your website that enables a company to kind of keep track of you and retarget you. Is that correct? Is that good understanding?
Yes. So if you're
Okay.
doing, for example, Google Ads, or you're doing Facebook ads, or pick any social media pixel out there, some of the analytics pixels as well, kind of just depends on which analytics provider. And if you're doing any kind of advertising or some type of tracking, session replay, you want to understand, I clicked on these 5 things on my website. It just depends on the company what is actually happening. But if you have some kind of pixel on your website, you might need to pay attention to these cookie banners and these rules, which is in the EU and UK, again, using them as just the gold standard. It's opt-in, which means before you can fire a cookie, let's just use Meta. Before you can fire that Meta pixel, or Facebook pixel rather, I have to opt in.
Okay.
Now, Jodi in Georgia, I don't have to opt in.
So they just do an over-inclusive because
they do an over-inclusive.
Okay. Yeah.
But now let's go to California. John, in California, you have some privacy laws. That law says you have the ability to opt out. You don't have to opt in. If you choose to have a cookie banner, because some people believe there's a requirement that says at or before the time of collection, you have to have a notice. So some people believe that to be, I need a notice, not just in the footer, but in a cookie banner. Well, if you have a cookie banner, California and several other states say, well, it has to look a certain way. It has to be symmetrical, meaning if I have accept, I have to have reject. One click opt in, one click opt out. There's a couple other states, again, depending on the kind of data that you have. Are you targeting kids? That's a whole different ballgame. Or do you have health data? Whole different ballgame. However, there's a whole nother universe. And I do know several different entrepreneurs and other small businesses have received these, and they're kind of, what is this thing? Which is the demand letter going after and using old privacy laws here in the United States. They are kind of wiretapping privacy laws. And there's a collection of wiretapping like laws. And we're not going to go too deep. But essentially, those old wiretapping laws, there are plaintiffs' firms going after different businesses saying, you dropped a pixel without my consent.
And they're
that
equating
violates
it to, like,
this law. Here's my
wiretapping.
demand letter.
Yeah, which is crazy because these wiretapping laws date back to, like, I think, like, they're inspired by, like, mafia activity, like in the
They're really
40s
old.
and 50s or 20s or
They're
something
really
like that.
old.
Yeah, wow.
And so there's an entire mitigation and defense strategy of how companies can manage that. So some companies say, I want nothing to do with that. I'm going to take a really conservative approach, and they put a cookie banner up.
It seems like a lot of companies
because they don't
are
want to
just
deal
taking-
with that.
Yeah,
Other
yeah,
companies
yeah.
say, well, I can't afford that. I need to be able to have this advertising, and I'm perfectly allowed to have it. They're willing to take the risk. So when it comes to cookie banners, you have to first figure out which law applies to you, what kind of data you have, and who you're targeting. And then could you be at risk for one of these pixel litigation lawsuits? And what is your risk tolerance? Then you can figure out, are you going to have a banner? And if you have a banner, then you decide what it's going to be. And so that's why you have this entire universe of different kinds of cookie banners all over the place.
Wow. Wow. Okay. We've gone kind of deep into the privacy stuff. I skipped over a couple things on a personal level or a business, about the business that I'm curious about. So first of all, you started the company. You had this, like, you said to yourself, I'm going to start it by my daughter's first day of second grade. I want to hear a little bit about why you decided, why privacy consultancy. And then secondly, just kind of like how that was meaningful to you, like deciding to start a business, being determined to start it before your daughter's first day of second grade. I think that's so cool.
Thank you. I ended up leaving after 19 years in corporate America, but it was a little bit before then when I decided I was just kind of done with corporate America. I had worked for 4 large companies in a variety of different roles. I had 2 young kids and decided I wanted more control. I wanted more flexibility, and I wanted to do something different. I was trying to find my happy place. I knew privacy. I knew it was emerging. I thought there'd be an opportunity there. I have always kind of been in some type of consulting-like role and had often been in what I had called then, and became more popular, an entrepreneur, doing a variety of new kinds of things in companies. And so I decided to take that risk, spent a lot of time researching to decide when I would be ready, and basically really just said, I need a date. I need a line in the sand. And what better way for everyone to have a fresh start? She was starting a new school, and that seemed like a good time, and I could work towards that. And it took me a while to be able to get there, but I'm very excited to say that it was 6 days before that was my last day at my large corporate role. And then my very first phone call was the same day as her first day of second grade.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And then you serve as a fractional privacy officer. I don't know if that was the original vision or eventually you evolved into that, but talk a little bit about, that role for companies.
Sure. So it actually has always been part of the vision. And I believe privacy is, you asked about security earlier. I believe privacy is following security, except at an accelerated pace. There are a lot of companies that have what's called a virtual CISO, virtual Chief Information Security Officer. It's for companies who don't need a full-time person. There's also not enough full-time people to go around in the security space. And so they're virtual, they're fractional. The same is true in the privacy space. There are a lot of companies that don't have a need for a full-time person, but they need more than zero. Much like your fractional CFO, fractional CMO, it's the same philosophy. What are the needs of the company on some type of part-time basis? And we'll be here. For some companies, we're literally meeting once a month and reminding them privacy exists. And here's the latest happening in the privacy space. Pay attention to these things. Let's talk about what's new and hot in your company, new product features, customer requests, marketing campaigns. Let's make sure there's no privacy missteps. For others, there's a lot of very tactical, operational privacy items to do, and they don't have the people to do it. We will take those on for them, and we're very much about meeting companies where they are. I think as there are more privacy laws, it's getting very complex. You're going to need that privacy knowledge and support to be able to make sure you're in compliance with privacy laws, meeting customer expectations. And it's just going to be a baseline. It's not going to be a nice to have. It's just going to be what you have to have.
Yeah. And you said that one of the kind of bleeding edges is AI, things, accounts like ChatGPT, and, some companies are taking some of their company data, some of their clients' company data, and they're like uploading it to like a free ChatGPT account. And then that information is going and is being used by OpenAI to train future LLM models. So essentially that information is being used in other people's search results. So tell me a little bit about how that's happening and unfolding.
Well, everyone is trying to figure out how can I use AI, and all kinds of software companies have cool bells and whistles and awesome marketing and sales that says it's going to solve everything for you. And people want to try it out. Well, for some of those features, depending on the kind of data, whether that's personal data, that's going to be a privacy side. But we also really talk to companies about the company data and confidential data. It's where companies really need to understand who is this vendor and what are you going to do with my data. When it comes to AI, so many of them are trying to use data to train the model. And it's really important to understand, are you using the actual data? So if I give you I upload my entire customer database to you, or I upload personal information, did I literally just give it to this other company and they get to use it for themselves? Before AI, that was a common question, but most companies didn't think that's what was going to happen. With AI, the whole concept of it trying to train itself, well, literally, how are you actually training it? Those are really common questions. And we're helping companies think about that. Think about what is the safe and responsible way to be able to use those AI tools first and foremost. So just in the last couple of weeks, I've been working with a company. They are evaluating a couple different vendors. And we were really asking, well, what kind of data is going to go into that tool? And how is that tool going to use that data? That's going to give the company comfort. Then they'll also have different policies. Let's talk about, we're recording this today on a video platform. There are
That's right, on Zoom. Yeah,
right on Zoom.
Where's that information go?
There's a lot of companies that want to use note takers.
Right.
So some note takers record and store locally, some record to the cloud. There are some note takers that are actually in the news because they were also using the data for themselves. Well, if you're recording a confidential conversation, are you okay with the vendor also having that data? Not just in your little universe, but potentially full access.
Mm.
Those are the kinds of questions I encourage everyone listening to really think about.
Wow.
What kind of data are you collecting, and what would you be okay with that company having access to it?
Oh, that's another thing that's changed so dramatically. I mean, like, I feel like I'm on group meetings and there's like more AI note takers than there are people these days. And I hadn't thought about the fact that, okay, it's really like this could be leaking that information out to the who knows who.
Exactly. And some of those note takers announce themselves, and some of the note takers don't announce themselves.
Wow.
There are some note takers, and you won't know that they're there. Now, imagine if you listening are one of those who has a note taker and it doesn't announce that it's there. It does it all in the background. You're having a confidential conversation. The other person is trusting that confidentiality, and now it's not confidential anymore. This is actually very important depending on the kinds of conversations you're having, and especially in a legal context. So in some scenarios, if you needed to count on legal privilege or attorney-client privilege, that might be gone if there's a note taker that is present. And depending on the scope and the nature of the conversation that you're having. So I know some of our clients, they won't let HR conversations have those note takers or be recorded, as an example, because the nature of those conversations could be too sensitive and they don't want to take any risks with that being recorded.
And I know you've also said things like presentation software or, the software you use for HR can also be at risk as well. So it's pretty much any software that we use these days. Almost every one these days could be a source of our private information, or could be a tool that is transcribing information or capturing information in some way.
It is. And so I've reviewed presentation software for companies before. And then some of those, when you actually read the terms, some of those terms even say, do not upload confidential information in big capital letters.
But everyone uses presentation software for all kinds of purposes. That's crazy.
Are using your data.
Yeah.
So think if everyone thought about, okay, if I have this presentation, would you put it out to the world? Would you just put it out on the internet for everyone to see? That's kind of what you're doing when you're giving it to a company like that. And if your answer is no, I wouldn't want that to happen, then you really want to be vetting the tools. And there's a lot of tools that do cool and interesting things. Think through, what are you okay with doing? Is it confidential data? Is it just an icon? Do you want any of that to be your own IP? And that's where I think some of these steps to review who they are kind of gets forgotten. And if there's a privacy notice that is more than a year old, my favorite is reading privacy notices, and it still has in blocks, enter company information. You can just tell they copied it and didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
If it just kind of looks like a page from the 90s and those still exist, they don't care about your privacy, because if they can't even care to get an outward facing notice right, they likely aren't doing the right things internally.
So if your privacy page has like a page counter on it, or it has like a little blinky emotion type of thing, like this kind of thing, it's from the 90s and you probably should.
Yeah, the formatting is really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just tell with the
no
formatting.
margins, just straight all the way across. Yeah.
Yeah, those are good giveaways.
So do you have a favorite in terms of all the big AI tools that are out there, the ChatGPT, the Gemini, the Perplexity, the Claude? Do you have a preference between those, or
I don't have a good favorite. No, they all have their challenges, if I'm really honest. Companies just have to evaluate what's going to work for them and what it is that you're trying to do. I would say, to, like everything, review your settings and make sure you're picking the ones that are going to be most applicable for you. And you kind of shared a story. I was talking to a business owner. That business owner has the free ChatGPT account and is sharing client information in that free account to get the benefits of it. Well, is the client okay with that? For me, that's what that business owner should be evaluating before they put client information into a free tool. So think about all the tools that you have and what would be okay and what wouldn't be okay. Look at their terms. Nowadays, and this is especially true, if you listening are a service provider and maybe you're a B2B tech company, your customers are looking at your website trying to evaluate, can you solve my need? And one of the pieces that they're looking at now, and I encourage you to put this on your site, and as you're looking at software, look at this information. here's all the features and here's the privacy features, here's the security features. And many are now answering, we do or don't use your data in our training, right front and center. It's going to say, in this tier, we do, in this tier, we don't, or we don't use it at all. Because those companies know that's the burning question that people care about these days. And they're putting it front and center. So again, if you're a B2B tech company, and this could be you, I encourage you to do that. And if you are evaluating companies, just spend a little bit of time. There should be a privacy page, a trust page, a security page, an AI features page somewhere that they list, here's what we're doing about your data, and then privacy and security as well.
And in terms of the AI tools, there's been this whole movement over the last 20 years from local software to cloud-based software. Everything's gone to the cloud. And now, and I'm going to get a bit outside of my technical depth here, but like, for example, OpenAI has an open source version. I think it's ChatGPT 3 or something like that, where some companies, I think, are like taking those things, taking the open source software and then locally hosting it in order to increase their privacy. I'm curious whether maybe this leads to kind of a movement back from the cloud-based, system that we've been used to for the last 15, 20 years, back towards like local hosting, because you know that you can control your data better.
I do. I think we're moving back in that direction. For anyone who's been here long enough, it kind of reminds me of the AT&T and the Bells companies. They were together, they were apart, they were together, they were
yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the same thing. Yes, I totally just dated myself in that conversation. Not the point.
Yeah.
I do think that is the movement that we're going to, because companies want control over that data.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Jodi, this has been great. I want to wrap things up. My final question is my gratitude question. So I'm a big fan of gratitude and giving our guests a little bit of space at the end here to acknowledge anyone, peers, contemporaries, maybe mentors who've helped you in your journey so far. Anyone in particular you want to shout out?
Yes. In preparation for this question, I have two. I'm the overachiever here with two examples. So the first one is going to be really early on in my career. And I remember it was a partner when I was working at a big accounting firm, and I underestimated what I could do. And I always said, no, I don't think I could run anything. I'm more like the COO. And he goes, no, and was just really direct. I think you're selling yourself short. And I think you absolutely have what it takes to be able to do that. It took me like 15 more years to believe him, but I always remembered that sentence. So I'm really grateful for that. Anyone here, I highly encourage you. I've also been a really direct person, and I encourage you to be able to give that type of direct feedback to people, because they might not respond right away, but it might stick with them. And then the second is kind of how I got to really believing that I could take this step forward and create Red Clover Advisors. And it was a dinner that my husband and I were having at a birthday years ago at a Seasons 52 at the bar. And that was kind of where I made my line in the sand. And it was at that conversation, I think you can do it. And the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work and you find another job. And so I'm really grateful to Justin for that Seasons 52 dinner that encouraged me to leave and to make the big leap. And here I am 8 years later.
Awesome, Jodi. And you, of course, so you and your husband have the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. He's the other side of the privacy coin on the security side. So you've been going 5 years strong on that, done a great job on that. Tell us a little bit about that, and also where others can go to learn more about you and learn more about Red Clover Advisors.
Yes. So Justin is a technology corporate lawyer and has a passion for cybersecurity. So we started a COVID podcast. People got COVID puppies, COVID renovations, COVID podcast. Still running strong 5 years in. And we talk to all sides of privacy, security, and AI. We'll have people who are chief privacy officers, various software across all those industries, chief information security officers, general counsels, professionals in the space. We try and make it really practical. And what people find is we are fun, we make it interesting, and we're also the commute size podcast. So we have, and dog walking. We've been told people mow the lawn, dog walk, and listen on a commute. So people really like it. I encourage you to find it on all your favorite podcast platforms. And the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I put out a lot of content. I really want to help make privacy simple. So please connect with me there.
Excellent, Jodi. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.